Hey there, and welcome to Latitude Photography Podcast. This is a live session where we're taking a look at your submitted images, listener submitted images. These were submitted through the Facebook page, and I'm just glad to have you all here. And of course, what we're doing right now is a recording. I've got my friend Tom Wagner on with me. Tom, welcome to this Latitude Live.
Hey Brent, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, this is going to be a lot of fun to just try and figure this stuff out because we've got a little bit of different tech, different things going on. I'm actually also having to be on wireless at my house because I thought I had a problem with one of my USB port boxes, and that's what was causing me to crash. And so we're just going to run with it and test this out and see what's going on. But we do have some images, and that's what the entire point of this session is all about, is just to kind of look at the images and just kind of have fun with reviewing what we got going on. So I'm going to switch us over to bring in those images now. And our first image is by Steve Connery. And quite frankly, I'm going in the order that Facebook showed them to me. So if anyone says, "Hey, I submitted mine before they submitted theirs" or whatever, I have no clue which order Facebook gave them to me. So I'm just kind of rolling with it in that regard. So Tom, we have this snow scene, and this is kind of zoomed in, and we have, it's basically looks like snow drifts, and we have a little bit of some texture coming through from the snow, and a little bit of shadows kind of coming through from the lower left-hand corner. Just share a few thoughts on this image. What do you think?
I guess my first thought is I don't really know what I'm looking at necessarily, other than snow, but I find it really interesting. There's not really a clearly defined subject, but there is a lot of good texture. So you have a lot of texture in the foreground, and then you have kind of different textures with that first little snow drift there, and then I really like the shadows that add some interest, and I think there might even be like some color, almost like the sun refracting off the snow a little bit. And then as you move towards the top of the image, you have more good texture. So yeah, I really appreciate all the different textures in this image.
Yes, I think textures and shapes is definitely the name of the game here on this image. You've got lots of bright areas too, some shadow areas, and so there's just this image has quite a bit going in it. But the kind of thing that you mentioned, you're not sure what it is, kind of an idea. Other than snow, of course. For me, for sure, it comes into the notion that it could be a nice, strong abstract, and
Sure.
I like the notion of it potentially being an abstract. But excuse me. But if we're going to do that, I would want to simplify the image just a little bit as well, to where we might get rid of a few of those things. Like in the lower left-hand corner, we've got a really dark shadow. I might want to say, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's emphasize some of the forms. Let's find some lines and really emphasize those. And I think with this same subject, I think we're going to elevate and see the image elevate, basically, and it'll become more powerful as we make it more abstract.
Yep, I completely agree.
All right, so let's take a look at the next image, and this one is by Drew Powers. Montgomery County, Iowa. Gotta love winter, he says. Or not, but, I personally am absolutely a fan of winter. And I don't know, how about you, Tom? Are you a big fan of winter?
I am if I'm someplace beautiful
Yeah.
that I can take pictures of it.
Yes.
I am generally not a fan of the colds, but if I can be distracted by taking pictures in the mountains or in the snow or something, then it's not so bad.
Yes, I like the idea of distraction because I know I've been out, winter or not. If you're out there, like maybe on the ocean or something like that, it can be pretty cold. And I've had several times where I'm just out shooting, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm done. It's time to go for dinner or whatever the case may be. But still, I just know I'm done. And as soon as I do that mental checking out, all of a sudden it's just like, all of a sudden I'm shivering. I'm cold, you know, and
Yeah.
it's time to go in and warm up and just, you know, get out of this cold. But when you're in the moment, it can be really just, you just don't think about those things. In this image
Right.
from Drew, we've got a little building, a little kind of like a farmhouse type. It's not a house. It looks like it's maybe got a little bit of a barn almost shape to it. It's got a cupola or some type of elevator or some type of grain type thing that extends out the top. It's a small building, so it's hard to exactly know. But then it's just in front of this huge, wide, almost flat field. It's got a little bit of rolling hills, but then the color is a little bit warm. And because of the shadows, we can tell this is very late in the day or maybe early in the morning. But just that little bit of that, flatness of Iowa coming through with a little bit of rolling hills.
Yeah, I really, one of my favorite things about photographing in the snow is how it captures the colors really well, and can add a lot of interest to the foreground. That if it wasn't snowy, it may not come through as well. So I really like the colors in this image, and it's very simple, with just that one building and the kind of rolling hills like you mentioned, and then kind of some leading lines. Looks like some grass there in the middle of the photo, kind of leading the eye up to that building, which I think is really nice also.
Yeah. And I would like to see this as an alternate option. Basically, I'd like to try out just cropping a little bit off the top and a little bit off the bottom to make it a little more stretched, a little more of that panoramic feel. And if you do that, it's going to extend or emphasize the strength of those rolling hills, and it will help us concentrate more on those interleaving shadows and forms and take us a little way from all that stuff that's in the foreground. So just a thought on that. I think it might help the image just a touch with this whole notion of just let's emphasize those items by cropping out the things that might distract a little bit from it.
Yep, definitely.
All right, this next image is already kind of cropped that way. It's a little bit of a horizontal appeal. And I suppose one thing I forgot to mention, Tom, as we started, some of these images we're probably just going to go a little more quickly than some others. It just depends on what, at the moment, the spirit moves us, so to speak. I did look through, I don't know about you, how much you had a chance to look through these images before we started recording, but I did look through them very quickly. Of course, I had to compile this all together, but I really didn't spend a whole lot of time concentrating on things. And when I do an initial review like this, I basically like to just see, okay, what are my shot from the hips type reactions as an immediate reaction? And then if I were to do a deep dive review, I would probably go through like 2 or 3 times and let the image really sink in. And then I can start to see more coming from the image or things like that. But anyway, this one is from Alan Aber, and he says, this is from a snowstorm several years ago in the North Texas area. And certainly at the time we record this, last week, Texas was inundated with ice and snow. And so this is North Texas. And so we have a horse in a snowy field, and it's kind of digging its muzzle down, trying to find something to nibble on. But we can tell it's actively snowing because the horse has this sort of, it feels like digital noise right in front of it. So what do you think here?
Yeah, I love the simplicity of it. The only thing for me, it looks like there's a piece of grass kind of on the left-hand side of the photo that I think is a little distracting. And then it looks like there might be some stuff kind of on the horizon as well. Right. And I think if those things were kind of removed, this image would be a lot better.
Yeah, the items on the horizon, I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's either like a raised railroad track, and it's really far away.
Yeah.
It's a solid line, and it has these little, stand items that are very regular, and it's just barely above the horizon line. And I gotta, in one sense, it's nice to have something give us that sense of the horizon a little more strongly. In another sense, if it weren't there, we would just have the natural transition of the ground, which is very bright, to the sky, which is slightly darker. And that could feel very peaceful if we had that. And yeah, with that piece of grass in the foreground, my eye is wanting either more of it, so there's a contrasting interest there, contrasting the horse, which is silhouetted, versus take it away kind of an idea. So the horse is all by itself. But um, I don't. To me, I don't find that to be a huge item myself. I almost didn't even mention it. It's just that item in the background. Yeah, it is what it is. And if there's any chance that you want to have some fun in Photoshop, you could try it out. But I just don't. I guess for me, it just comes down to, it's more of the shot that it represents what was there, and it's still nicely composed. We have a good exposure. We're still getting some detail in the snow, and we have lots of successes otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just for me, the piece of grass in the foreground, if it was bigger, I think it could add some balance to it.
Sure.
But because of its size, personally, I find it a little distracting.
And this next image, also by Alan, a fish factory near Tangstad, Norway. So this kind of image, really, for me, it's about those mountains. I just start to become very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawn into it. I have, those mountains are like a magnet to me. And whenever I see anything mountainous that's snow covered like this, I just love the texture. I love the shapes and the ruggedness and the cold feeling that it has. But of course, here it's broken up by this factory item and this building, and it's over the water. So you've got lots of things going on in this image.
Yeah, definitely. I love the kind of cool tone of this image. It definitely makes it feel very cold. And there's like some rocks in the water there, which provide a nice little foreground element, nice reflection to provide some interest. And I like the leading edge or the leading line of the edge of the water and the snow-covered rocks there on the right-hand side that kind of leads you into the building, which then leads you into the mountains.
Yeah, I really like those clouds too, and they're a nice. Just it comes into a layering of the image. We have some smoothness in the water, the ruggedness of the mountains, the straight lines that are in that building, and then we go back to that smoothness, that cushiness, that cottoniness that are the clouds. So that does have a nice sense to it as well. Yeah. All right, this next image by Drew Sanford. Been a miserable week, he says, of winter weather for some people. Could have been much worse for me. So he's got this close-in shot of some twigs that have some ice going around them that are basically they're encased in just a little bit of ice. And so it's a nice kind of zoomed-in, detailed shot. What do you think of shots in general? What do you think of shots like this?
So for me, it's not really my style. Because I have tried to find shots like this, and I just struggle to see it. It's one of the areas I'm trying to work on. But I'm much more of like a big picture, wider landscape type photographer is kind of what I go for. But what I like on this one is you have a lot of contrast with the blue background and then the trees, and then you have a lot of good highlights and shadows with the sun reflecting off the ice and then the shadows of the branches, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece, the highlights of the there's these little areas where it's trying to be a little bit of a starburst, where it's glinting in the ice, the sun is glinting in the ice. And I think it'd be fun to try and work it so we can get a little more coming through on that. And I don't know what the aperture is here, but stopping that down to like f16 or so just might pull out a little bit of those starbursts in the image, and that could be pretty cool. Yeah. There is one lone twig in the lower left that feels to be, all by itself. And, whenever I try and do an image like this, many times when I'm out there shooting, I'll be like, yeah, this is really cool. I like the patterns. I like the energy. I like the whatever. And then when I get back in Lightroom, it's just like, why did I shoot that? and I don't know. It's just it can be a challenge sometimes to make these things come out a little bit better and intriguing is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, this next image by Drew Powers, beautiful Iowa winter sunrise. So this is we've got some good color on the sunrise, the good oranges going to a pale yellowish, pinkish in the sky up above, and then we've got this frozen landscape with this kind of a curvy river area coming in, and then it's dotted with these trees, and of course there's no leaves on the trees or anything. And what do you think? How's this one sit for you?
I really like the kind of winding river leading up into the sunrise or sunset there. I really think it's nicely done. Even though you can't see all the river, you can kind of towards the midground there, you can tell that it's there, and it still kind of leads the eye up into the middle of the frame. Really like the colors on this one. There's kind of a pinkish hue throughout the foreground, which I really appreciate. And then I think the sunrise or the sunset's really beautiful colors as well. I think I might have maybe dimmed down the top part a bit. It's pretty bright, which I know is natural for the sun, but the eye is drawn to the brightest part of the image, and so I think that kind of can be a little bit distracting from the rest of the scene. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, agreed. That really bright sky is about the only thing that I want to see somehow. Even if it were a half a stop darker, and you can do any number of changes, whether you're using Lightroom or any other program, to darken just that certain section, and that will equalize it a little bit more, and then the eye is going to not be just drawn up there. In what I can also say is I'm just glad there's no detail up there, like there's no really detailed cloud formation or an airplane or a bird flying through the sky, although if there's a bird there it'd probably be really awesome. But what that's going to do is that's going to provide something for the eye to just lock onto, and you can't get away from it. Where here, yeah, it's bright and your eye's drawn there, but at least you kind of start coming back down because that's where all the interest is. But making it a little darker, that's going to make that happen a little more quickly.
Yep.
And it would probably feel a little even more natural. That's where we're thinking too about the notion of the ability for the eye to discern and look at all this beautiful color that's before us, and our cameras vastly lacking that ability compared to the eye. And so it starts to, when you darken that section, you start to kind of more equalize it in the sense of probably what you were actually seeing or feeling at the time anyway.
Right.
All right, this next one is zoomed in a little bit, and it is a tree, an evergreen tree, almost a lone evergreen tree. In the lower left-hand corner, we've got another, looks like evergreen. But then we have just kind of, looks like it's done during the snow. And this is by Joel Galbraith. And looks like it was done during a snowstorm, or at least a gentle snowfall. And to me, it looks like there might be a little bit, I'm just not so sure if it's my capture, but right there in that center on that tree, it just doesn't feel as sharp as it could be. I know the copy I sent you, Tom, it is slightly lower resolution because I wanted to save a few megabytes on the transferring that file over, but it just seems a little bit soft right there on that tree, and I don't know if that's because of the snow or if it's just a misfocus thing or just what.
Yeah, I can't really tell on my copy here, but what I like how that tree is, it's front and center, not in the middle of the frame, but it's very clearly the subject. Lots of good color contrast with the green of the trees kind of contrasted with the white and the brown of the snow, and then also the red of the trees behind it, which I think is really nice. Lots of interest in this picture besides just that one tree.
Yeah, with those warmer hued trees in the background, that definitely does set it off very nicely. Yes, I definitely agree with that. All right, this next one, our friend Bree Stockwell, she submitted this one, and it's a somewhat zoomed in of a tree. It is fairly symmetrical in its composition. So the trunk comes right up from the bottom, right in the center, and then it spreads out towards the top. And looks like it's a bit of a backlit tree where we see some of these warm lights coming through on these little tiny icicles that are just dripping off of every branch. And so there's lots and lots and lots of details here.
Yeah, I like the symmetry. I think it works for me. There's a lot going on in this picture. You have a lot going on in the kind of the bottom part of the picture, and then also in the top. I like the cool colors in the bottom, and then how it transitions to the warmer colors on those tiny little icicles. And I'm guessing Bree probably took this at her home or close to her home near Austin. So I know that this is probably quite a sight for Austin. People in Austin to see, because it does not get much snow or ice down there. But I really like those icicles. They're all just like really tiny and about the same size, but they're big enough that you can see it, and I think it's really cool.
And then you have a different texture too, because the lower portion, while it's a cool color, it's also kind of curved over grasses, and that's kind of cool. That's pretty good.
Yep.
All right, this next one also by Bree. She submitted about 4 images or 5 images, I think, and we're only looking at 2 of them here. So we have this creek, this river type thing. It's during the snowstorm itself. We can see some snow falling. I would guess her shutter speed is in the neighborhood of a 30th of a second, maybe slightly longer, because we see that snow streaking as it's falling. We have a tree anchoring the right-hand side of the frame, and then some rocks kind of coming up and around on the left-hand side, and then there's some also in the middle of the creek too. So any other additional thoughts on this?
I like the slower shutter speed. It kind of creates that sense of movement of the snow falling. Sometimes when I'm taking pictures of snow falling and it's like a snapshot, it's hard to tell that it's actually snow. It almost looks like it's just like noise or something, or sensor dust or something like that. So I like the motion here. I like the kind of the curve of the river, how it kind of leads your eye through the frame, and I think it's a good photo.
Yeah, cool. All right, this next one by Travis Ford, and let's see, he was saying, during a snowstorm on my street in Woodhaven, Michigan, COVID has really challenged me to look for compositions in the mundane rather than in interesting locations. And I think I can totally agree with that, where I just love going to interesting locations, but trying to find the interest in places closer to home or closer to where my folks live or what have you. That still has certainly something that has been going on in my experience as well. This is a nighttime scene. Why don't you go ahead and rather than I describe it, why don't we have you describe it?
Yeah, so there's in the midground / background, there's some trees, and then a street light kind of at the top of the frame, and then in the far background, it looks like there's maybe a house with a light on, and then some street lined with mailboxes, and the mailboxes get bigger as you move towards the foreground, and I think it's interesting. You have the kind of the warm street light there, kind of shining light down, and then it's on the cool snow, and the snow is a very cool color, which kind of helps me to feel like I'm there and really cold. This is the kind of the feeling I get from this. What are your thoughts, Brent?
So yeah, it certainly feels rather peaceful because there's basically no action going on. I do see some kind of vehicle, either they're in the road or the road comes to a T, and this is just off the road then in someone's driveway or something like that. But with the spotlight feel coming down, that's kind of it creates that very calm, quintessential winter, winter boulevard type of feel, because it's predominantly lit by this one light. We, like you mentioned, some background lights are there, but pretty much the only things that are lit of interest are by this one light. And so that creates an interesting, eerie, moody feel. I do wish, on a compositional scale, I do wish that something like those mailboxes that are somewhat in the foreground, either that we were a little closer to them, or maybe there's something else that we could look at. I don't know. It's just, I it is cropped mostly square as well, so I'm not sure if it was there's more on the sides I want to see, if there's more up and down I want to see. It just leaves me wondering what else is there, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, and let's click the button and get to the next one. Okay, Brett Baker, view of Rio Tinto from the Utah State Capitol Complex. So this is a mountain scene with some clouds up above. It's a black and white image, and we have what seems to be an emphasis, it's some really good strong light, and those clouds are just really coming in very strongly. What do you think?
I really like it. I think winter landscapes are a great opportunity for black and white when a lot of times there's not a lot of color. And I would, this is purely speculation, I would guess that there's not a whole lot of color in the clouds or on the mountains. Um, it kind of looks like the light is coming from the left side, and so by converting it to black and white, playing with the contrast and the lights and the darks, you can really show a lot of interest, which Brett's done here, especially with the clouds and the light on the mountains. What are your thoughts,
Yeah,
Brent?
yeah, and we've got multiple textures coming through in the mountains too. The lower portions of the mountains has this tighter striations of some sort in the rock and snow and whatnot, and then you come to the middle part of the scene where the top part of the mountain is, and it turns into the standard, snow-covered, snow-capped mountain type of idea. So it intrigues me to know, to go down there into Utah and see exactly what this looks like, because I don't have enough information to know what the bottom of that mountain is made of. It's just all
Yeah,
about lines and texture, and in one sense I like that mystery. In another sense, it's like my brain is saying, but I got to know, and I'm just not sure what it is. But certainly those clouds, just they're very, I don't want to say active, because they feel like they're just strong, they're powerful. And especially
yeah,
that one that's really close to that brightly lit mountain face, where it looks like it's kind of almost bouncing off the mountain.
yeah. There's definitely a lot going on with the clouds, which I think adds a lot of interest. And I agree with you. I think I would appreciate if the foreground, probably where the mine part is, if that was brightened just a little bit, so you could get more of that texture out of it.
All right, this next one by Carmen Spratt, Iced Pier, Long Island, New York. Iced Iron Pier. The temp and the winds were brutal this day. Excuse me. But I had to try and get my shot. And yeah, this one, the light is a very low angle. It's warm, but the ice is just majorly covering this thing. You can't hardly even tell. It's just you have these metal pillars coming out of the water, and then it's just like, it's like their whole purpose is just to hold ice. But the thing that really intrigues me is we've got it perfectly timed. We have a bird, a seagull flying right in the middle there. You don't really see it on the first glance, but you see it right there, and it's like it was just perfectly timed, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I like the focus on this one. The foreground's kind of out of focus, so it really draws the eye into the center of the frame where it's in focus. And took me a couple times to look at this to kind of realize what I was looking at. And I think without the description of it being an iron pier, I probably wouldn't know what it is. But I agree with you. I really like the that bird there in the middle. It's got the light shining on it, and the nice warm light is really nice.
All right, this next one, when I saw this, I gotta tell you, and then when I learned where this is coming from, I gotta tell you, I was just like, okay, I really want to go see this. This
Yeah.
is, let's see, Hollow Rock in northern Minnesota. He says, this is Levi Jansen. He says, we visited this beautiful place during our honeymoon right around Christmas time. Shortly after this photo was taken, it started to blizzard and we lost power in the cabin we were staying in. Well, you know what? At a place like this, I wouldn't mind losing power. That's okay. And
Yeah.
what we're looking at, we have this. It almost looks like an ocean seashore, but it's going to be Lake Superior, given that it's northern Minnesota. But it's a very rocky coast, long exposure, so the water is crashing over the rocks. And then we've got this little island just a tiny bit offshore. It's got two major trees on it, and the color is just gorgeous with that warm hue in the sky reflecting off the cool water. Yeah, this was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I really like this one. I like the whatever shutter speed was used. It the water captures the motion, but it's not so smooth that there's still detail there. The uh, the water on the right hand side where it's kind of got the blue and the warm hues almost looks like a painting to me, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is really incredible. I love the contrast of the dark beach with some of the colors and then the kind of the white of the water washing up. And then it really leads the eye nicely into that island, which has a lot of great colors in it as well. And if it weren't for that island and some of the snow on it, you wouldn't really know that this was a winter scene because it
Right.
kind of doesn't look like it otherwise.
Right. It doesn't have that sense of ooh, it's cold kind of an idea. And he says other also because I had a comment on there and he replied back to his comment saying it's a great place to explore, which I'm sure it is, and he's hoping to get up there more in the fall this year. And if I'm approved for my sabbatical, I had finally got my papers in for trying to get a sabbatical this fall quarter, which would mean normally we would go back to school uh, in late September because we're on the quarter system. And if I get my sabbatical, I won't have to go back to school until next January after the summer break. So what I have to do though is
Nice.
some explorations and some work on that sabbatical. So um, what I put in to do was to travel about and find these gorgeous locations, mostly national parks. That's what I kind of said I would do. But let's face it, I'm going to stop elsewhere. Um, and my purpose for the sabbatical point of it is to then take those photos and make custom illustrations out of them in Illustrator, and then make some posters and the like. And so that's what goes towards my teaching here at the university. But of course, getting out, driving like mad, getting as far as out there as I can on the road to get some fall color. Because here in the Pacific Northwest, it's just not that big of a deal. Fall color, yeah, we got some hot spots and such like that, but it's nothing like back east. And it would be amazing to be able to shoot something back east during fall color. I grew up in Chicagoland and suburbs of Chicago, I should say, and haven't been there for fall in since I moved, which was the early 90s. Um, so it'll be nice. It would be nice if it's possible to get back at least to Minnesota, maybe further for some fall color type stuff. So keeping my fingers crossed. We'll see.
Nice. Yeah, I hope that works out for you.
All right, this next one by Steve Anderson, taken on my hours exercise as allowed by the UK government. He says during their lockdown period in the pandemic. So this is a canal coming from Great Britain. And I love these kind of because they got canals going everywhere. In some locations, not just everywhere, but in some places they're just very common. He says he lives in the West Midlands in the UK, and there are supposable, let's see, more miles of canal in the UK city of Birmingham than in the Italian water-based city of Venice. So I've looked at some maps of Venice too. There's lots of canals in Venice. You don't have just the Grand Canal, you got tons of canals. So if there's more in the city of Birmingham, that's pretty amazing. And so he's shot this
Yeah.
with a Canon EOS R, and he gives the rest of the details there. But it's a little boat, a little floating something. It's got a painted lion on it, and it looks like it says Lion Art. It might be Lion Heart. I don't know. Something is obscuring the extra letter if it's there. But this nice little bit of snow, and then we've got some trees on the banks of the canal, and then of course it's anchored to the edge of the canal.
Yeah, I think that boat is clearly the subject adds a lot of interest to this image. Otherwise, it'd just be some trees that are um, somewhat interesting with the snow on them, and then same with the water. It's somewhat interesting, but then this lion boat really adds some interest to it, both with the colors and the detail that are on it. And so I think it really works
Yeah, I
for it.
think in particular the colors. I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something I didn't really talk about. Everything in this image except that boat, everything else is just muted and kind of what you expect on a drab, dreary winter day with snow falling. There is evidence of the snow is actively falling here too. So, yeah, you kind of
Yeah,
expect that. The only thing I would like to see removed on this image, in the upper top portion of the image, on just above the boat, and it goes off the frame, there's this out of focus item that I can't help but think if you step forward 3 or 4 feet, you're probably going to get rid of that item because it's just no longer going to be in your frame, and that would totally clear up the composition and not provide something to for the eye to get tangled on.
yeah, I find that distracting as well. I think, yeah, like you said, taking a step forward or a couple steps forward would fix that, um, and the image would still work just as it is.
All right, this next one is talk about contrast of color. This thing is nice. It's in one sense it's very gorgeous because of that color that we have a reddish orangish tree with some things that have fallen around it. Its leaves have fallen around it in the snow, and then it's surrounded by these other very cool colored. They got hoarfrost on them or something along those lines, type of tree, and it's great to see that contrast of color and the subtle textural differences that happen there. Good. I think that there's lots of good things going on in this image too.
Yeah, I like how, it's not just that one tree. If you look to the left of the main tree, there's a little bit more color, and then to the left of that, there's a little bit more as well. So it's not just like a one, just that one main tree. But I do love the contrast of the colors, like you mentioned,
Yeah,
the warm colors of the tree against the cool colors of the snow or the frosted trees in the background.
absolutely. All right. All right, we're coming towards the end. This image is a cluster of trees, and so it's quite interesting with how the image is weighted. I think because when we think of a visual weight, it's very centrally visually weighted, very heavy, and but it's all these details of all the tiny little twigs, and then everything on top of it is just purely plain, and it's just a detail free sky, and then we have some kind of snow elements there in the foreground that are giving us a little bit of detail to look at too, setting the stage, for where you're at and the like. But yeah, it's very. This is it's interesting in that it's so heavy in the center, but at the same time, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think that looks like there's some fog or something kind of happening on the sides. That kind of makes it feel very dreamy, very ethereal, and I kind of like it. Uh, there's so much detail in the center on the branches of the trees, but then it kind of fades out to this very soft and dreamy look on the sides, and kind of the same with the snow on the ground. You have that little piece in the foreground there on the kind of the right hand side, and then a little bit of interest kind of throughout the bottom of the frame, which I find interesting to me.
Yeah, and this one is Terry Brockway Holdren, and so it looks like what they're saying here. Unfortunately, the 5D Mark III is at the Canon doctor. So they dropped it last week, and so this was taken on the cell phone and then processed through Snapseed. So, yeah, it's good to good to still be creative regardless of what you're dealing with what you got. And when you said, you got some fogginess, I started to think, that's probably some kind of reverse vignette where we normally think we're going to darken the corners. It seems to me we have this overall vignette applied that's brightening the corners.
Yeah, could be.
All right, this one, there's a lot of Joel Galbraith again, out for a little black and white snowshoeing in Island Park, Idaho. And so we've got an ultra wide view, it looks like, and we're really close to a water feature, some kind of river, and then we have some nice snow mounds just breaking up the scene here in the foreground. Some really smooth stuff off to the right hand side, and then we've got this water coming in on the left hand side. It's just still water. It's not like it's flowing or nothing. It's a little cove right here in the river, but it's providing a lot of interest. The snow covering is providing a lot of interest that wouldn't otherwise be there, if not for the snow, of course.
Yeah, and I think the black and white really helps to accentuate the contrast between the snow and the water, and then also the snow and the trees in the background. Really helps to separate those things so that it makes it really clear what you're looking at, and it also helps to accentuate and bring out the textures in the snow that you can see, and kind of the layers of the snow, I guess, in the foreground.
Yes, absolutely, and that's what I think is important to keep for sure, is that texture. It's a very, very subtle texture. Snow, when it's just an even covering, of course, it's a very even tonality. It's a very even surface. And we still have a little bit of that texture kind of coming through, where if it were just a plain sheet of whiteness or very light grayness, it just wouldn't be exciting at all. We do have a little bit of that going on in that mid-ground island sort of thing. The top of it does feel a little bit overexposed, and that's the only area where my eye is just kind of like, I wish I had a little more detail there that wasn't blown out, but everything else is just coming in super well. And then some trees along the background, very nice back setting for that. So, yeah, pretty well considered composition, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Patrick McGeoch, I apologize if I'm getting that name wrong. Fascinated by all the different ice formations in this one. So tell us about this image, Tom.
Yeah, so we have some snow in the foreground that leads to some ice as you kind of transition from the bottom to the top of the image, and then looks like at the top, I can't tell if that's a tree or if that's more ice that's kind of got these vertical lines. It's a black and white image, and for this one, I really like the different textures in it. So you have almost, they look like kind of roundish globs of snow in the foreground, and then that transition to the vertical lines of ice and some icicles, and then this background that's maybe a tree or more ice is also vertical as well. And I think the contrast could be increased a bit to kind of add some separation. And I'm really curious what that thing in the background is. What are your thoughts, Brent?
Yeah, the thing that are really two things almost always draw me into a black and white image, and that is certainly shapes and forms. I kind of put those together. And this thing has lots of different ones. So in the top portion, we've got these really elongated pieces. In the middle ground, we've got these bent over pieces. In the lower portion, the foreground area, we've got these they're like little dough balls, or I don't know how else to describe them. They're just little globules of snowy goodness, icy snowy goodness. And then we've got it's broken up with a few empty cavities where things have separated or broken apart or whatever. So we've got lots of different things going on, and I think they all work well together. I think that's what really brings this image together, is the fact that we have eliminated so much from the scene and we're really just focusing on an interesting portion. And yeah, that thing in the middle, in the background middle area, I have no idea. It does look interesting, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Once I can find my mouse on my screen, there we go. I'll click back down to the next one. All right. So Snow in the Tetons by Barbara Pearson. And we've got, I mean, you can almost never go wrong in the Tetons in the wintertime, I think. And then we have some, what I would consider replica wagons anyway, in the foreground areas. Tell us a little more about this image, Tom.
Yeah, so like you said, we have the the wagons in the foreground that offer some color amongst a bunch of cool colored snow. And that transition to some line of trees kind of in the midground with the mountains rising up in the background. The foreground is all in shadows, and then the background is all in the sunlight. And then there's a blue sky and looks like maybe some clouds coming off of the peaks there. I really like the contrast of light in this one. You have the bright mountains and then kind of the shadow area in the front, and then also the contrast of colors with the wagons really helps to draw the eye into that because it's so different than what's immediately around it.
Yeah.
I would have maybe liked to see this taken a little bit earlier in the day,
Yeah.
or yeah, this is a sunrise shot or early morning because of how the light's hitting the Tetons. I do like the composition. It's completely different than anything I've ever seen in the Tetons, and so I appreciate that part of it. But I think having been to the Tetons multiple times, um, a earlier morning shot would have potentially cast a lot of nice, softer light onto the mountains and
Yeah.
gotten some of that alpenglow, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, that's where it becomes a challenge because, and I do agree with what you're saying on the light on the mountains does feel slightly harsh, but then of course if you have less light overall, of course these wagons in the foreground are just going to be darker as well. So there is a balance that you have to figure out there and how you're going to approach that. And one thing I'd like to also explore might be just either zooming in just a hair so we get rid of a little bit of the foreground area and we emphasize those wagons more, or maybe even just walking closer if possible. I'm not sure if we're on a road or if there's a huge drift that's keeping us back. So that might not be possible to do that, but just a little something to emphasize those wagons just a touch more, I think would be really nice. But yeah, those mountains are a little bit on the bright side, and getting that at a slightly different time of day, or otherwise toning it down just a little bit on the exposure might help bring a little more life to the mountains, and we're not going to have some of those areas blown out. But yeah, love the composition. I've actually only been there once myself, and I might be going back this summer slash fall on my hopefully big journey. When I was there, though, I bought this map or this booklet or whatever it was about like the best places to shoot in Grand Tetons, and I don't. This may have been on there, but I don't remember this being on there. So to have something that's a different view of such a well-known piece of mountain is so awesome and so welcome to have.
Yeah, I've been there twice and researched quite a bit places to photograph, and definitely have never seen this one or this composition, and so really appreciate the something different from
Mm-hmm.
a place that's probably over photographed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Alex K. Morley. Heavy snow during the blizzard 2 days ago. This was posted January 24, by the way, at Smith Rock State Park in Central Oregon. I love Smith Rock. I've always wanted to photograph the park with snow. Absolutely. I was there probably, oh my, we're looking at least 7 years ago now, and I did some winter camping.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was phenomenal. And it cost like $5 a day. It might be a little more now, but it was like $5 a day. And got this beautiful flat area for the campground, and it's just like right there, right on the trail almost. You just like just seconds from the trail, and when you go up over the rock, basically, it's quite the climb. And I remember the first time I went up, I didn't have any spikes for my shoes. The little, it's like putting chains on your tires only for your shoes. and I was just slip
Yeah.
sliding all over the place. I was like, I can't do this. I'm gonna fall off this cliff or whatever it is, and I'm just gonna, not gonna be able to go home to my family. So I went in that night to the store and bought some, and then, um, and I think I actually ended up not being able to go over the top for some other reason. The weather just got worse or something. I can't remember anyway. But still, I was lamenting not having them on that first trip up there, because the first hike up there, which was just the day before, because it was so gorgeous, and I just wanted to just enjoy it all. But when everything is just a sheet of ice over everything, I was just like, nope, I can't do this. But what we have here is a lone tree, largely a lone tree as the main subject, and then it's definitely during the active snowstorm, and we've got some fading definition of the different Rocky Mountains in the background and a few things in the foreground, and then that river that's going through there. And if I remember right, I'm tempted to go ahead and try and bring up a browser. I think that's called the Crooked River. What are your thoughts on this?
So I've been to Smith Rock once. It was over Labor Day, so it looked nothing like this. But really beautiful place to shoot. I like the balance here with the tree on the right hand side and then the rock on the left hand side. Really helps to balance out the image. Mm-hmm. And I like the river as well. I also like how I think it's just natural from the snow, but the rock in the background is somewhat faded, a little bit foggy. Yeah. So it really helps to, that tree is the main subject, and there's no doubt about it. If it wasn't as foggy, could be some questions about what the subject is. Where am I supposed to be looking?
Right. And yes, I looked it up. It is the Crooked River. And great place to shoot. If you ever get a chance to get out there, really any season, really good place to shoot. It's a small park too, so there's not a huge amount of trail that you can get yourself lost on or anything like that. So it's just a really good place. All right, this next one by Natasha Jalasinski is how I'm going to say that name is pronounced, and I apologize if I get it wrong. Let's see. She says her knees were starting to cramp from squatting over the low camera, and both the tide and the sun were beginning to rise, and I knew the time and capturing the image was growing scarce. And it's an image of basically some jagged mountains, a jagged peak, a jagged piece of triangle rock, basically, in the background at the sunrise, and it's brilliantly lit, and then we have a calm body of water in the midground, and then some just massive ice flow type structures here in the foreground. And as it comes up onto the shore area, it just kind of a crunchy, chunky ice.
Yeah, I love the light on the mountain here. Nice warm light, and then you get some of that reflection on some of the ice there in the midground. I love the ice in the foreground too. It definitely adds some interest. I think the only thing for me is I don't know if it'd be possible to get the camera lower to take out some of that midground where the water is real smooth and there's not much detail or interest there. I think that could help a little bit with the overall composition, just lowering the camera a bit. But otherwise, I think it's beautiful.
And I'm dying to know the camera settings, because it feels to me that the mountain in the background is slightly out of focus, and I want to know if it's either just something that is due to the aperture chosen, or is it due to the fact that it's such a small aperture that we have some distortion going on. It's where diffraction is happening, and when you have that diffraction going on, doesn't matter, you think, oh, I'm getting sharper and sharper with that smaller depth of field, but not really. When you have diffraction happening, you're getting more in that range of acceptably sharp focus, but then you're destroying what acceptably sharp focus means, because you just have all this extra diffraction going on. And I'd like to see that be a little more crisply in focus. It seems that the foreground elements are fairly crisp in focus, but also the chunks of ice. So our anticipation of exactly what sharp focus means changes a little bit just because of what the subject is, where that
Sure.
mountain back there, that it just feels slightly a little soft. So if she wants to give us some
Yeah.
feedback, I would welcome some feedback.
Yeah, I think because of where that mountain is in the photo, it's kind of right. When you look at this photo, it's kind of the first thing you see is the brightest part. So
Hmm.
I would like it to be in focus as well.
Yeah, and it's just slightly soft, it feels. So, all
Yeah.
right, next one. Now, this one, when this was first posted by Brett Baker, also, um, found a spot along the Mountain View corridor. And let's see, few shots on the Wasatch, front at sunrise. And so what we have here is the ridge that he's standing on is seen in silhouette here in the foreground, and then you see the mountain in the background, and then you have this line of cloud, and then you see the mountain up top above the cloud, and then you have more clouds above it. So it's a nicely layered image, and it's pretty incredible with all the different layers and placements and whatever of texture going on.
Yeah, definitely. I like the black and white. I think that the the sky immediately behind the mountaintop is really bright, which kind of distracts away from the mountain. If there was a way to brighten the mountain a bit and darken the sky, I think that would uh, kind of draw the eye more towards the mountain rather than the sky. But I
Yeah.
like the silhouette in the foreground, kind of add some interest there. When I first saw it, I thought maybe cropping it from the bottom uh, to where the that layer of clouds is, but I think I like it better with the interest there underneath the clouds. It
Hmm.
helps the viewer understand what they're looking at.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say crop a little bit off the top only because it does get pretty dark up there, and it would then make it feel a little more even. It would provide a little more size emphasis or size relationship, whatever, of the overall frame. The mountain would
Yeah,
become larger overall in the frame if you crop a little bit of the top off.
yeah,
But just an
yeah,
idea. It's it's not that it's not that detrimental to the success of the image, that's for sure.
yeah,
All right, this next one by John Copley, Getting the Mail in Alaska. And we have very warm, ridge line, I guess we could call it, there in Alaska with a very crescent moon showing right almost in the exact middle of the frame, but just slightly off center. And then we're right in the middle of the road, and we've got a vehicle off to the side of the road, pretty far in the frame. And I guess the reason I like this image really is just because that color in the sky.
yeah. I really like that color. I like the crescent moon. It really adds a lot of interest to the sky.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would have is the trees on the left and the right. I would like to see those darkened. There's a couple bright spots that
Yeah.
look like they don't necessarily really fit with the rest of the colors in the sunset there or
Yeah, I'm not
sunrise.
sure what post production was done here. It does seem like maybe there was a selection made, especially on the right side. Possibly there was a selection made, and sometimes Lightroom has a rough time selecting those transitional places where you have this silhouetted item going transitioning to the sky. Again, I don't know what was going on. It's just a curiosity.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, Jeremy Schwartz had an image here. Local winter wonderland with some interesting atmosphere. These are tussocks on the edge of a frozen lake, which in the winter is used as a trail thoroughfare on the local university campus. And so then I asked, local, where are you at? And I believe he said he was in Fairbanks, Alaska, but I don't have that as part of my screenshot. So I'm going off of memory here. But anyway, what do you think?
yeah. I mean, this looks awesome. It'd be an awesome walk to work or to
Oh,
school.
yeah.
Uh, I,
Yes.
I love the texture and the snow in the foreground, and then the trees in the background, and then there's some clouds and interest in the sky. It's a very monochrome image with a cool blue hue, which I
Yeah.
think works here to help put you in the mood of being cold and in a winter scene. I think this
Yeah.
would also work really well as a black and white, and could get some good contrast with it.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I do like the coolness in a shot like this. Certainly, I definitely say go some type of monochromatic feel, and I don't doubt that black and white would work. But I do appreciate the coolness coming through in this one,
Yeah,
and then the big trees on the left, and as they just kind of swoop down as they go to the right, that's kind of a nice line that's implied there with that.
yeah.
All right. This next one by Gary Adickman in Vermont. We have something like a building of some sort or a structure of some sort up in the background area. And then it's just water kind of flowing through this frozen stream. And we have some rocks in the stream, some fairly warm rocks in the stream. I do feel the image is a little bit heavily processed. It's a little more than my taste would do, but we still get a very good sense of, eye flow and certainly water flow as well. It's a nice long exposure for the water to flow on through.
Yeah, he says in his comments, this is a little structure where people go and measure the water flow of the river, which determines how much snow making is permitted by the state, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, Brent, I agree with you. I think maybe a little bit too contrasty. Um, I really like the textures and kind of the edges of the ice. You can
Yes.
see it on the right hand side. Looks like the snow maybe has melted a little bit and has frozen as it's fallen down onto the water. I like the motion in the water that you can see, and then the colors of the rocks, which are contrasted with the blue color of the water, which I really appreciate. I just like you, I'd like to see it toned down a bit.
All right. Our next one, it kind of sort of in the same idea of that one with the twigs in the clear sky, but this is twigs with a bunch of snow, and by Nathan Goldberg, freshly fallen snow covered bush branches. And this is another one of those things that I've shot, and when I'm shooting, it's all like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And when I get back into Lightroom and I look at it, just like, what in the world was I thinking? This one, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say that to Nathan at all. On this one, what I really appreciate is there's an overall sense, an overall direction of the branch lines, and so that creates a direction, that creates an order to the chaos, and I think that's what helps make this image fall into the working category, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's a little chaotic, but because everything's
Yeah,
kind of going in the same direction, it kind of helps to bring some order to that chaos. And then I really like the contrast of colors between the kind of the warm branches and the white snow. I think it
yeah,
works nicely.
cool. And then this next one by Michael Sharp, out for a walk and capture this woodland which is scheduled for development shortly. A light dusting of snow overnight added to the scene. Yeah, without that light dusting of snow, this just would not have been the same. So we have really narrow and multiple trunks, but no branches. That's what's so odd here. There's no branches. It's like they've all been trimmed off or something. But they go back.
Right.
They recede back, and so it gets darker and darker. But then we have this snow ridge in the foreground, and it's nicely zoomed in, so it's just a very simple composition. What do you think?
I agree. It's very simple, but there's a lot of interest with the different shading of the trees. And I think that I like the little snowdrift in the foreground. I think it really helps the composition.
Yeah,
And at first, it almost looks like it's like intentional camera movement when you first glance at it, but then when you look at it closer, there's a lot of detail in those trees, so you realize
yeah,
it's not that at all.
right.
And I think it's really cool, really unique.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, and those very strong vertical lines, just and they're repeated over and over. That's a good repetition, is a good design theme to be thinking about. And then of course that strong line where that snow mound in the foreground. Lots of good things working for it, and then we kept it simple, and that really helps.
Yep.
All right, this next one, also by Nathan Goldberg, it's some kind of tower. And the thing about this one, I don't know if it's the strength of the tower or just the fact that it's the same exact color as the tree on the left-hand side. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems to be a little off balance. I would have liked to have seen, if possible, maybe moving the tower to the right side by shifting
Yeah,
the camera to the left,
right.
which would provide a little bit more balance with that tree, kind of offsetting the tower. I do
Yeah,
like the
and
contrast of
sorry, go ahead.
I like the contrast of the foreground bushes there with the
Hmm.
green colors against the red. Definitely really works here.
And if you were to shift the camera like you're saying, that foreground element, because it looks like there's some kind of foreground element there that's kind of sort of being cropped off, it might be a good supporting element then.
Yep, yeah, definitely.
Okay, Manuel Laura, he submitted an image of some type of field. I don't have any caption or other information with this. So it's along the side of a hillside, kind of an idea, and so we're really looking at just shapes and textures of a hillside.
Yeah, there's some interesting. I'm curious what the looks like steam or maybe smoke coming out of
Yeah.
the some of the rocks. Maybe some geothermal features. I'd be curious what that is. Uh, I like the foreground. I like the warm colors in it. There's a lot of interest there with the grasses and the rocks kind of sticking up. The little rock on the bottom right hand corner seems a little out of place to me. That maybe by shifting the camera a bit could
Mm,
help that to not get
yeah.
it so close to the edge.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah. When you mention that, it certainly, yeah, I could see stepping to the right, 2 or 3 feet. You're going to create tension then between that element in the foreground and those elements in the background. And so you want to also, while you're stepping to the right a little bit, you want to still then turn your camera slightly to the left to compensate for that movement. And you're going to create that tension and that conversation between those elements in the scene. And you might enhance a little bit whatever that element is. Certainly, we don't know what's around that little corner there or just what, but yeah, I think it would be good to see that a little bit of that. Also, on a scene like this, with those things you mentioned with the fog kind of coming up in the mid ground areas, uh, those are potentially very interesting, and I just wonder what it would take to walk out there and try and emphasize those things. And it's more just curiosity at this point. On this particular image, I think you're right on that item where a little more something prominently interesting in the foreground would really send this one over the top.
Yeah, or maybe zooming in to,
Yeah.
like you said, to focus more on the steam that's coming up, and then it would take out that foreground piece. But you still have good foreground from the kind of those darker rocks that are still lit up in the back of the foreground, if you will.
Exactly. All right, nice, somewhat zoomed in. Daniel Medeiros from Winter Wonderland topic. Morning sun glinting off snow crystals in a meadow. Minimalist winter shot. And so, yes, it's backlit. A few kind of, a few little mounds and then some grasses or some type of twigs or something just poking through the snow there.
Yeah, I really like the light in this image. That you have the main subject, those grouping of grass or plants, whatever they are, sticking up in the light, whereas the rest of the plants are kind of a little bit darker in the shadows. So it really helps to emphasize the subject. And what I really like about this image is the sparkling from all of the snow. I think that's really cool. Adds a lot of interest to it, but not in a distracting way.
All right, I'm going to just briefly look at some of these others until we get to our secondary topic, which was at arm's length. And so we just have a quick one from Texas Hill Country. It's snow with a bison. And
Yeah, I
then,
saw this one,
yeah,
and I figured this is like Yellowstone or something.
Yeah.
I would never guess that there were bison in the Texas Hill Country.
that's right. Let's see. Brett Baker, first attempt at a pano. Haven't used my camera in 6 years. So glad. He says this podcast helped inspire me to get my to dive back in. I would love some feedback, so make some progress this year. Well, for your first panel, this is definitely a good attempt and a good success at a panel. Got some good warm colors, good subject matter, and yeah, that's it's coming together.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's great.
All right, and let's see here. Joel Galbraith again with a cabin and some water, like a river flowing by the cabin. Just makes me want to, spend, like I commented when he posted this, I want to spend a week in a place like that. It'd just be so amazing.
Yeah, this looks incredible. Be amazing to stay there.
And then another one probably from that same location where from above where the river is kind of splitting, coming into one, whatever. That is definitely a place that would be worth exploring. And then another one by Alex K. Morley here. Let's see, Alpine touring the volcanic cone at Mount Bachelor, Oregon. A real wonderland of snow and ice. And what's really interesting here is we have a tree that's growing crooked out of the ground. You can look at the ice, the way the ice is going, and that, what true down is, and that this person is actually going up a hill, not just trying to fake it with a tilted camera, and how they're skiing. But usually trees grow upwards, not to the side like this.
Yeah, really unique with the angles, but I think it works out. I like it.
Yeah, the black and white really seals the deal on this one for me too. If we had color, I'm not, unless the color that the skier was wearing was really contrasty and stands out nicely. I'm just not convinced color would help this image otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so here we are finally at our at arm's length secondary, because I had some people saying, what are we supposed to do, those of us that don't have any snow? I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this at arm's length. So the first attempt at cloning out some distractions, says Brett Baker, on this particular image. It's some leaves and some seed pods, really close in, and brilliantly lit by the sun, and then darker sky behind.
Yeah, like Lori said, the blue and yellow colors are very complementary, and definitely lots of interest with highlights and shadows. With the sun shining, there's some good light shining on it that's illuminating the leaves and I guess some of the buds of the branch, maybe. And I like how it's clear what the subject is with just that main part of the leaf and the kind of three buds sticking out there in focus, and the rest kind of soft focus.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brent?
Yeah, it's I would like to see some exploration. We only have one image submitted, so it is what it is. But whether we can, place some other leaves in the background, so we have, this trailing off effect of as things get further away, they're more and more out of focus, and we have some of that with the seed pod type things. I'm just wondering, maybe there's more leaves that we could position back there, so we have a little more compositional items that could be played with. I just don't know, because right now this foreground leaf, this main leaf, is folded, and so it's got, the underside is lit, and then it's casting a shadow on the top edge of itself as it's folded up behind it. And that whole transition, in one sense it's interesting, in another sense it's so different from everything else in the scene, it really stands out, and then it makes me not look at anything else. So that's where I'm just thinking, if there's something else that was kind of like it to complement it, that's where I'm thinking maybe it would be all right to see that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, this next one I think was just for fun. John Copley, A Bird on a Ship. So literally, this little tiny bird is in his hand, and took a picture of it. So that looks like a lot of fun. They're on some kind of ferry or some kind of ship or something like that, and this just looks like a lot of fun to have a little bird like that.
Yeah, I think the hand really helps to provide a good sense of scale, because otherwise it would be tough to tell how big that bird is or how small it is.
And it's just a tiny little bird, and it just amazes me how thin those little legs are, and
Yeah.
they don't freeze somehow. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, Kenneth Cole went for a walk at a local nature reserve this morning and captured this portrait of a swan. It was close enough to touch. And I love this kind of shot. When I saw this, it instantly transported me back to a Japanese garden in Chile where I had done some shooting, and we had some fish in the pond and some swans like this also fighting for the same food. And it was pretty exciting. But here we also have some drops of water that are falling, and then there's lots of drops around the swan's head and neck. And fun to get close to animals like this.
Yeah, I think the texture on this is really incredible. You have the texture of the water droplets there on the head, but then you can also see the feathers along its neck. And then you also have the texture of that black part kind of at the base of the beak. And then the smooth colors of the beak, I think, are really nice also. And I really like those colors because they're so different than what you see in the rest of the image. And it really contrasts nicely with the blue in the background.
Yeah, and then the overall shape of the head and the neck, very strong shape like that too. So it definitely does a good job coming together.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, is that my last one? I think that's my last one. So
I think it is. Yeah.
That means we're done for this. So let's just go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Tom, for being here. It's been fantastic to go over these images and to take a look at them with you and to give some feedback to our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Good. And the next topic is going to be a topic for March, and it's going to be called Under the Sun. So whatever we can do, what I'm really hoping that we can do also is actually incorporate the sun somehow and some kind of subject that's under the sun. So whatever we can do to showcase that kind of an idea, let's see what we can have for the month of March. And so that's what we're going to look for, Under the Sun. I will make that that topic there in the Facebook group, and you'll be able to take a look at that at that time. So with that, we're going to do our next one, Under the Sun. The plan will be to actually do it live, and then we can have comments from all the people, because what we were looking at here, I just wanted to test it out, and then I was going to post this video later, but I just wanted to test out my system so we could just plumb see how it works and hopefully not crash. And just before we started, we hit the go live button tonight. I actually did have a crash. I was like, no. So did a little more configuring on my computer, and we've gone this whole time just nice and solid, and I'm even on Wi-Fi, which is amazing. So so that's good. And an extra big thank you to Tom for being here as I'm ironing out all these wrinkles and making this thing happen and getting it to come together. So we'll see y'all in the next one. Hopefully we'll be able to get that scheduled here before too long, and we'll kind of have the countdown to that live session. And then we will certainly keep going on the regular audio-only podcast too, but look for us in the live session sometime towards the end of March. That will be during my spring break, so I should have lots of flexibility to schedule it whenever we want to do it. So, all right, thanks so much for being here, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for submitting, and please get those images in for Under the Sun is our next topic. All right, Tom, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good, Brent. Thanks.
Yep, you bet. So long for now. Or maybe I should say, until next time, happy shooting, because that's how I normally end things.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Brent. I've enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun.
Yes. It's always fun. Alrighty. Take care.
All right. Have a good night.